Hello, evening, and welcome to class. This is also to remind us that once it's 5 on the dot, or a few minutes past 5, our facilitator will begin. So what we want to do before then is to join our colleagues to please join the call in time. It's quite important that everyone join, as we all know. So today we have an interesting topic. Uh, Party chairmen should reach out to their members, and also all of us can reach out and to enjoin them to please come on, because the class is about starting. Once it's 5 on the dot, I would unmute the mic and get in touch with you again. Hello again, good evening. It's 5 on the dot, and you're welcome to class. My name is Tohib Bisiri, and for today's discussion, I'll be your host. We would be having very interesting conversation today, as it's quite an important one for us to get to understand what happens post elections. What do we need to know as Nigerians? What do we need to know as people who are politically literate about the post elections and the results collation? This is what we will be discussing today: results collation and post elections, or post elections conversation and engagement. What do we need to know? What do we need to learn? How do things work post-election? This and many more is what our facilitator for today will be taking us through. Again, please remind everyone to join the call. By now, it is believed that everyone is expected to be on the call. So we can see that more people are joining, but please and please do well to encourage your colleagues to join, because once the facilitator starts, those who have not joined will begin to miss some part of the messages, which is not something we want or we intend people to experience, right? So while doing this, I would find it quite important to read the citation of our facilitator so that we can know what is in need for us for today's conversation. So our facilitator for today is Amina Mayango. I'm hoping that I got the pronunciation of the surname correctly, but if I don't, I would like to be corrected as we go on, ma'am. So Amina Mayango is a Nigerian trained lawyer, chartered mediator, and election expert with over a decade of experience in election administration and planning. She has worked navigating diverse areas of the electoral processes, including but not limited to understanding legal frameworks governing elections both domestically and internationally, election law guiding candidates' qualification, election dispute resolution mechanisms, political parties, and the complex interchange between legal statutes and electoral procedures. Throughout her career, Amina has worked to ensure the integrity and fairness of electoral processes, first at the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, where she worked with a diverse group of electoral stakeholders to improve the electoral process. She currently serves as the project lead for the election project at the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development CGID, where she continues to develop initiatives to educate for voters and enhance electoral transparency, integrity, accountability, and inclusivity. Members of this cohort, I present to you our facilitator for today, Amina Mayango. And of course, the topic for conversation, as I've rightly introduced earlier, is result collation and post-election conversation. Ma'am, please, you have the floor now. You can take on now if you're ready.
Well, my dear,
Okay.
good day, Tawhid. Good day, Tawhid. And this my uncle, you call, I feel so bad. I'm your uncle, is a personal friend. I will apologize for the bother of your name a little bit. Thank you as always, bro. If I'm right, this is the
Uh,
17th time you're this.
no
We're very
problem.
proud to have you. So, my uncle,
Okay. Hello.
I want to
Hello,
almost call it
everyone.
my uncle. It's a pleasure to have you. Take care, Amina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
you
hear
can be
you.
heard.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
We
You can
can
be
hear
heard.
you clearly. I
Okay,
can hear you very
I will
clearly.
need to put off my video so I had to come sit outside because the network is terrible. Honestly. I don't know.
Well, sorry
Anyway,
about that.
so yeah, it's good to be in class again. And thank you, Kunle, for correcting the pronunciation of my name. But Tawhib, I don't hold it against you. I mean, you're not from Plateau. Well, you're not from Plateau. And you're probably hearing the name for the first time, so I forgive you. Um,
We can no longer hear you. In case you can hear me at this time, we can no longer hear you. Perhaps it's the network.
okay, I keep getting thrown out. I think I'll just join on two devices so that if one throws me out, I'll have the other one as backup. So I
Thank
hope
you
you
so
can
much.
all hear me still.
Yes, it's clear now and better.
Okay, great. So we'll be talking about collation of results and post-election, which is a very important aspect of the electoral cycle and elections in general. And very important thing you should know in your journey to political literacy. Um, like they said earlier on, my name is Amina Miango, and I'll be taking you the class in the next couple of hours. So just hang there with me. If you have any questions when I'm done running through my slides, when it's time to discuss, then we can, ask your questions. So before I go into collation of results, yeah, there's there is certain part of um elections that I usually start with the electoral cycle, and that is because you can't talk about things in the electoral process without understanding what the electoral process entails, And the electoral cycle is a good way to start. Yeah. So unlike people who see election as just a one-day thing, that happens, people go out to vote, and then it ends. Experts, election
Oh, okay. I guess the network just did its thing again. So let's hold on. She would join us immediately she's able to join. I believe she's trying to also join on another device. So please let's hold on and we'll stay around till she joins. I believe it's off to a
Please,
great
can
start for the
you mute my
conversation.
other device? Because I was trying to
Okay.
unmute it and it's telling me I can't. So that when this goes off, I can easily join on the other one. So we don't take too much time. So you can hear me now, yeah?
Yes, very well.
Oh boy.
We can hear you. We can hear you now. It's
Can you
clear.
hear me now?
Very well. We can hear you.
Okay, good. So I think I'll just use my phone and I won't be able to share with my phone. So I'll probably send the materials to you after because this keeps throwing me out. My laptop keeps throwing me out. So like I was saying, election is not just a one-day event. Yeah, it's a cycle that has a diverse number of activities inside, and a cycle that the experts in their wisdom decided to divide into three possible sections: the pre-electoral period, the electoral period, and the post-electoral period. And within these periods, within the pre-electoral period, for example, you have activities such as the budget and funding for the election. You have the development of the election calendar. You have things like election logistics. You have staff recruitment, training, voter education, and all those things. Party financing, party registration, and all that. So all these activities. So when you hear that, okay, there are people are approaching INEC to register political parties. Yeah, these are all pre-electoral period activities. And then you have the electoral period. And during this electoral period, you have things like the nomination of candidates, you have campaigns, you have voting, which is done on election day. And then you have results collation, which is one of the things we are going to discuss today. So, like I said, you can't talk about collation without understanding where it falls in the whole electoral process, electoral cycle. Yeah, you have to understand its position. So when you talk about results collation, voting, and all those things, they fall within the electoral period. And then for the post-electoral period, you have things like review of the election that just held. You have strategy meetings, strategy engagement, strategy workshops. You have reforms. All these fall within the post-electoral period. Now, one thing though you need to understand about this cycle is that it is not a hard and fast, like it is not
a rigid cycle. And why do I say so? It is because there are things that may be in one part of the cycle that may extend to other parts of the cycle. So when you talk of reforms, electoral reforms, for example, electoral reforms goes on and on from post-election to pre-election period. Like we've been having with reforms since probably 2023 up until now. We're still talking about electoral reforms, and things like voter and civic education, for example. While it is an electoral, it is classically classified as, it is classically put under the pre-electoral period. But it's voter and civic education is basically an all year, all round, all period thing. Yeah. So you find that some activities in one cycle may extend to the other part of the cycle. So can you still hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. We can.
Awesome, awesome. I'm feeling so bad that I can't try my share my slides, but I'll keep trying on my laptop. If I am able to maintain connection for some time, I'll just share. So another thing I love to talk about when I'm talking about collation is the election legal framework, and that is because you can't talk about elections without knowing the laws that guide elections. Yeah, you can't talk about elections in vacuum from the laws. And as a lawyer in a democracy, I always say that um, what do you call it? Elections are not just political events; they are also um, legal events because they are guided by laws. There are laws guiding the conduct of elections, and all of that. So when you talk about elections, you need, or anything at all, in the electoral cycle, you need to also understand the laws guiding these processes. Please, Tariq, can you unmute my other? I'm trying to share the screen so that at least ah oh it has gone off again. Don't worry. Don't worry. Or should I share the slides with you? So maybe you can let me share the slides with Lisa. Maybe she can just do it from her own end, because not being able to share this is very uncomfortable. Uh, okay. Okay, Lisa, please, I'm sharing the slides with you. If you can just maybe help me so they can follow the class as I go through with it. Well, once you see it, please let me share it. Anyway, so I was talking about the election legal framework. Like I said, elections are not just political activities. Yeah, they are also legal activities, and that is because no, I did whatever you have. I did some corrections, so it's probably outdated. Whatever it is you were given in class is outdated. So I'm sharing the updated version of the slides with Lisa now. It will come soon. So Election is a legal activity, and because it is a legal activity, it is guided by certain laws in Nigeria. So when you're talking about the election legal framework, what entails, what does it comprise of, what are the laws that make up the election legal framework? In Nigeria, there are lots of them, yeah, because Nigeria is not just a country existing in isolation, yeah. Nigeria is a signatory to 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 international conventions, to a lot of international agreements. So if you're going to look at the election legal framework holistically, you have to include all those things, all those ECOWAS protocols that say all ECOWAS countries must practice some form of democracy. The African Convention of Human and People's Rights that talks about the right of people to participate in political affairs of their country, the right to vote and be voted for. You're talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which also talks about, all the grants all those political rights. And then you have conventions like the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. So you have all those documents here. But for the purpose of this class, I'm just going to be looking at three distinct laws: the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and then the INEC regulations. Now, for the Constitution, the reason why our Constitution is important is because within the framework of Nigeria, within our jurisprudence in Nigeria, there's only one law that every other law grants its validity from. The Constitution is not just some worthless document that somebody prints. It has a spirit which grants its ultimate powers, and it is whatever the Constitution says is that is practicable in every aspect of our national life, whether it is financing, how our country runs financially, or how we elect our leaders, or how what it entails to be a citizen, or what it entails to, whatever it is our Constitution that says, okay, these are the criteria to be a citizen. These are the criteria to vie for office. So, what powers does the Constitution grant? First of all, when you're looking at the Constitution as part of the election legal framework, you see that the Constitution is first of all the document that establishes INEC, that establishes the state independent electoral commissions, and these are the bodies in Nigeria that are charged with conducting elections. It is also the Constitution that provides for qualifications of every office. So if you want to contest for president, the Constitution says you have to be 35 years old, you have to have at least a first school living certificate, you have to, all those other, you mustn't be a member of a secret cult, all those things. If you want to be a senator, the Constitution says you must be 35 years old and all those other things. Then House of Reps, State House of Assembly, all that. So the Constitution provides for who can qualify to even contest for these offices. The Constitution also, apart from setting up INEC, it gives INEC the powers to do what it's meant to do. So the Constitution says that, okay, well, I'm not just creating this body, yeah, to come and exist for nothing. I'm creating INEC so INEC can conduct elections. I'm creating INEC so that INEC can register political parties. I'm creating INEC so that INEC can have the powers to make regulations to guide its own, activities. I'm creating INEC so that INEC can conduct referendums. Yeah. So the Constitution grants INEC all those powers to do what it should do. And then the Constitution also says, okay, it will be crazy to just you know, exist and not have other laws, yeah, that back me up or that break down all these things I've provided. So the Constitution says the National Assembly can make laws for the benefit of Nigeria. So it grants the National Assembly the powers to make laws, you know, and it is because of that, those powers that the Constitution says, okay, the National Assembly is the body that will make laws for Nigeria, that the National Assembly had the powers to create, to make and pass the Electoral Act. So the Electoral Act exists because the Constitution allowed it to exist. Yeah, and it also goes further to not only, okay, if the Constitution says INEC can can conduct elections, how does it conduct its elections? The Constitution breaks it down. Yeah, what method will it use to, sorry, the Electoral Act breaks it down. And the Electoral Act we are using now is the Electoral Act 2022. Before then, we had the Electoral Act 2010, which was amended a number of times. We had the Electoral Act 2006, and so on and so forth. So the Electoral Act takes each of, so INEC can conduct elections. Okay, this is how INEC will conduct the elections. INEC can register political parties. This is how INEC will register political parties. And it goes on and on. So the Electoral Act basically breaks down every function and powers that INEC has and makes it, you know, much more practicable. Now, remember I said earlier on that the Constitution creates INEC, and it also gave INEC the powers to make regulations, yeah, to carry out its activities and all that. As a result of that, INEC has issued a lot of regulations and guidelines that, you know, to help make its work easier. So when you go to INEC website, or you know, anywhere it is where you get some of this information, you see that there are guidelines on registration of political parties. There are guidelines on recall of um, of members of the legislature, and then there are guidelines, regulations, and guidelines for the conduct of elections. So basically, though the Electoral Act breaks down the Constitution, yeah, but it doesn't do it effectively enough for everybody to understand, or for it to be very easy to implement. So when you have a situation whereby the Electoral Act says INEC can conduct elections using any method it decides to. I mean, it's not saying anything. It's really not saying anything. So as a result of that, INEC created these regulations and guidelines to further break down what the Electoral Act says. And then, so if INEC is, if we're allowed to conduct elections, and the Electoral Act says we can decide the method we want to use. Okay, let's break it down. And then the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections further breaks it down so that it is implemented properly, and so that everybody, citizens, civil society, everybody can pick it up and say, okay, this is the method INEC is actually using in collation of results. Oh, this is a method INEC said it is using to collate results. It is using to transmit its results. It is using to register political parties and all that and all that. Yeah. So now, hope I'm not leaving you behind. I hate that you can't see my face and I can't see your faces. Am I still being heard?
It's very well. You can be heard loud and clear.
Okay. Okay. So now the collation of results, yeah, doesn't, the reason why I am going through all this is, first of all, that no knowledge is wasted. Yeah, that's first of all. And secondly, you can't discuss collation of results without knowing all these things I've just said. You can't talk of collation without knowing what the law says about collation, or even if there is a law that says anything about collation. You can't talk about collation without understanding what the electoral cycle says. And of course, you can't talk about collation without understanding what collation is part of. So in elections, you have this thing they call election result management. It basically refers to how the process and the tools and the rules that are used to collate, to first of all collect, transmit, collate, verify, and announce election results in an election. So when you talk about the election result management, it starts from when people have voted, yeah, that's the collection of the votes, yeah, and then you transmit those votes, and then you collate it, and then you verify it. And why is this system important? It is because it talks about every part of um, results management on election day, and it starts from when people vote. And this voting can either be manual or electronic, but in Nigeria, we know that our voting is manual. The only state that had electronic voting was Kaduna. They had an electronic voting machine, but they didn't use it in their last local government elections. So the result management. Wait, how many of you are in Lagos, and how many of you voted today? If you're in Lagos, I just want to just type "I am" and I voted in the chat. I want to see those who did not vote. By the way, if you're in Lagos and you did not vote and you're in this class, is unacceptable. You should vote. It's part of your 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 work as a citizen. You must vote. It's not acceptable that you sit in your house on election day. So election result management, yeah, it starts from vote counting. When all the votes have been cast and all that, the presiding officer counts the votes that have been cast, and then he records them in results sheets. And then those votes that have been cast, that have been recorded in results sheets, will now be transmitted. And transmission of election results can either be electronically or physically. And in Nigeria, it's it's physical with a bit of confusion. And then from the results transmission, you also have collation, which we are going to talk about much in detail in a bit. And then you also have result verification, how you cross-check the results from the polling unit with transmitted data. Yeah. And this is usually like for those who have voted in elections or have worked in elections, usually when you transmit results, and it's being collated, before you collate it, you have to cross-check the number of accreditation on the Beavers machine, for example. So if the Beaver says that 2 people were accredited, and then you are seeing votes for 500 people, you definitely know that there's a problem. Yeah. So once you verify that result, you declare the results. And that's where you get a winner and all that. And then those results, you don't just throw away election results, of course. You store it and you archive it for court cases and all that and all that. Now, let's talk about collation in more detail. What is collation of results? Like I said at the beginning of this class, I said collation is an important aspect of election day administration. And for me, it's probably the most important, yeah, because you can do everything right. You know, we saw how 2023, we're all in Nigeria in 2023, everything was done right. Yeah, all the publicity was done right. Everything was done right until it came to collation and transmission, and then everything went to hell after from there on. So, a well managed election process can be compromised where collation is not handled properly. And also, where collation is not done transparently and accurately, there tends to be credibility issues with the process, and it could lead to rejection of the results. We are still talking about 2023, either rightly or wrongly, about how terrible it was. Yeah. And it is because one aspect was not managed properly. And it has brought up all these issues till date. And if you, I remember carrying out a survey in last year and even recently for Anambra governorship elections. Last year for Edo and Ondo, and then this year for Anambra. And INEC scored very low on credibility because people do not trust INEC anymore. A large number of electorates do not trust INEC. A large number of electorate do not trust the judiciary. And these are issues that were caused by a, a collation process in one election. Yeah, it probably has been gathering from past elections, but the major damage was actually done in 2023. So no matter how beautiful an election is conducted, where you mismanage the collation process, there's tend to be credibility issues. So, what is collation? After this much talk, collation is simply the tabulation or summation of votes cast at an election. So, when you go from polling units, all the votes that were cast at the polling units. Remember earlier on when I was discussing election results management, I said that um, one of the first stage of that process is when you count the votes. And this can be done either manually or electronically. But in Nigeria, of course, I said it is done manually. So each vote is collated, it's counted, sorry, at the polling unit. And then you record those results that were counted. So let's say we have party A, B, C, D, E. You record each of the scores of each of the parties on the result sheet, and then you transmit it to the first level of collation. So collation is done by using that result sheet that has the votes counted written on it, where you have the votes counted, written, and taken from the polling unit. So that's the document you use for collation. And like every other part of elections, collation has stages. It doesn't just exist. You don't just, for example, um, take results collated from polling units and then just um, for presidential elections, for example, and then just collate it at that level and just announce who won at that level. No, it has stages and stages and stages. And for elections such as presidential elections, it will have up to 4 or 5 levels of collation. So for presidential elections, how do you collate presidential election results? Because I know people like presidential elections in Nigeria. I've never seen like Nigerians love presidential elections so much. You know, I was reading I was on a group earlier on, and people were complaining that the voter turnout um for Lagos local government elections was poor. And I was like, and this is the elections that is meant to get more people interested, because all of us live in a local government. All of us, you know, there are few people that live in Abuja where the president, even in the Abuja, we all live in 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 registration areas and under a local government. So we should want to know how our resources are being spent at that level. We should want to know the people who represent us at that level. yeah, it's good to, yeah, it's good to have a good president and all that. But it's also good to have good councillors, good local government chairpersons first, because they are your connection to what governance is. But we really do not care in Nigeria. Nobody cares. We just, you know, okay, who is president? What's Tinubu doing today? And then you forget that you have local government chairpersons. Okay, so let's talk about presidential elections, and then we'll talk about how coalition is done at local government area too. Don't forget, we are talking about elections that are mostly conducted by INEC, and that is because the processes used by the state independent electoral commissions are basically the same when they are conducting local government elections. And the reason why I'm using elections conducted by INEC also is because INEC also conducts one area council election for the FCT. So, I'm able to use the correlation for the FCT area councils to explain our collation for LGA elections for the state independent electoral commissions. So how does an INEC collate presidential election results? Remember I said it starts from when at the polling units when votes are counted, and then the votes counted are then recorded on results sheets. From that level, the presiding officer, which I'm sure a lot of us that served in Nigeria between 2011 to date have either done that work or known somebody that did that work during one of the elections that I've held, yeah? Except if maybe you served in a year that there was no election at all. So the presiding officer takes those that result sheet where he recorded the votes from the polling units, and he takes it to the registration area or a ward level. For INEC usually uses registration area, but for CX, they usually use ward most of the time. So they take it from polling unit to the registration area collation center, where all results, remember we're talking about presidential elections now. So all results from polling units under that registration area are brought to that registration area collation center, and they are collated, counted and collated into the registration area results sheet. Yeah. So if there are 200 polling units under a registration area, all 200 of those results are calculated and recorded on the registration area collation sheet. Then from all registration area, remember local governments are broken into registration areas are broken into polling units. So from the registration area, you take all the registration areas under the local government. So let's say we have 10 registration areas in one local government. You take those 10 results to the local government area collation center, where you collate all the results for presidents. Remember, we're talking about presidents in the local government area collation results sheet. And then from the local government, you go to the next level, which is the state collation center. And at that level, you take all the results from all the local governments in the state. So if there are 19 local governments, you have 19 result sheets coming to the state level. If there are 44 local governments, you have 44 local government result sheets coming to the state level to be collated. Yeah. So once that is collated, you move to the next level of collation, which is the national level for collation. Remember, we're talking about presidential elections. So you take all the results. In Nigeria, we have 36 states plus the FCT. The FCT is a state, basically, in cases of in elections. Yeah. So when you hear election results being announced, it's usually said that we have 37 states. Yeah. So all the results from the 37 states are now taken to the National Collation Center. It is at this national level that you collate those results, and then you are able to get the person with the highest number of votes and all the other constitutionally expected requirements. Then you declare the person president elect. So it's pretty straightforward, actually, for for presidential election. And if you are doing it for local government elections, local government elections, you have councillor and then you have chairperson. Yeah. So if you're doing it for local government election, in fact, I think that's probably the easiest level of collation. So from the polling units, you have for councillors are represent wards or registration area in an area council administrative governance structure. So for each councillor, their collation will end at the ward level. So you just collate that result sheet that the presiding officer brought from the polling unit. You just collate all those ones that came from the polling unit under that ward, and then you declare the winner, and then it ends. But if it is for chairman of the local government, it goes a step further. You would take those results from the registration area that make up that local government and take it to the local government collation center. And then that's where it ends. A winner is declared and all that and all that. Now for State House of Assembly, for House of Reps, sometimes in a state House of Assembly, for example, you may have two local governments that make up that constituency. So from the local government area, sometimes the local government collation, it could also be one local government. So in cases where it is one local government forming a constituency, collation will end at the local government area because that is where that same place will serve as the constituency collation. But where there are multiple local governments forming a senatorial district or a House of Reps constituency or State House of Assembly, an additional level of collation is created above to create a constituency level collation of results. So it's actually, it may sound complicated, but it's very easy, especially for people who have done some level of election work. Collation, first of all, you never forget that it is by level by level. It doesn't start until the next level above the polling unit. Yeah. And all. So like every principle, like every aspect of the electoral cycle, there are principles that guide collation of results here. You can't, like I mentioned earlier on, we had a lot of issues in 2023 because our collation process looks like it had been compromised. Yeah. So it brought a lot of issues. So when you are collating results, as in case some of you decide to go that route in 2027 and work as collation officers or something, there are basic principles you need to take into consideration. You need to ensure that the process is transparent. So things like picking your calls when you are supposed to be you know collating results, or looking like you are favoring one political party over the other. You need to be able to check that and be very careful. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, you can be heard.
Because for a bit, okay, all right. Sorry. So, you need to be very transparent when collating results, and you also need to, if you are, for example, an observer or a party agent, you need to demand that level of transparency from collation officers, you know, if you are in the field. And then also, collation needs to be accurate. Yeah. So, and this is because when you, it gives the, can you hear me?
Yes, it went off a while, but it's back now.
Okay. So, you know, when you cancel and cancel, it gives off the vibe that, you know, you change the numbers. So in collating, you need to be very accurate. And how do you do that? In practice, usually collation officers are advised to tear out maybe one of the last pages of the result sheet, because the result booklet, it comes in, you know, in duplicates. So you tear out a part and you do all your calculations, all your cancellations, everything in one on that extra, you know, piece of paper before you transfer it to the proper original document. That way, you are able to um, remove all those unnecessary mistakes, and then the numbers are accurate. Also, because of this accuracy principle, INEC has a process where it deploys staff that they call collation support, collation and verification support for collation officers. And what these staff, basically, who are INEC staff, what they do is there's a soft copy representation of result sheet in on their system. Yeah, it has all the political parties, everything that basically everything the result sheet has is what they have, but in soft copy. So as collation officers from one level are reading out the numbers, are calling, they are also using, you know, the Excel sheets that they have to impute the figures. And of course, computer is computer. It will calculate as it's being imputed, and you get the proper number. And the good thing about that system is that it also guides against things like overvoting, because once there's overvoting, it turns, there's a part of it that will show red instead of the normal black color, showing you that, oh, there's actually overvoting here. So in principle, that's a very good way to ensure the accuracy of the numbers that come out of elections, because with the computer, this thing, collation and returning officers have it easier. They can just look at the figures, confirm with what they have, and then, you know, they impute the accurate numbers. And then also another principle is that you must be able to verify the numbers. Yeah. So if you're moving from one level of collation to the other, you must carry the collation document from the previous level to the other, so that, and hand it over to the next person, so that if there's any problem, say for local government collation at the national level, they will have something to look at and correct it. Yeah. So it's very important that every collation system, for it to um to be acceptable, the best practice is that there must be other documents to confirm from and to verify the numbers that are coming from one level to the other. Another thing with collation is that you must ensure the security and integrity of the process. Integrity is closely tied to what I said earlier on, that you must also be seen as being transparent. But also beyond that, the process must be seen as being transparent. So if it means deploying security to protect, the collation centers, if it means deploying people with integrity to man the process, that is why during Atayiru Jega, you know, um, university lecturers, professors started becoming collation officers, because they are seen as, academics are seen as having a certain level of integrity. Yeah. So that's basically to ensure that, okay, this process shouldn't just be, secure, but it must be seen to also have integrity. It must be seen to also be safe. I remember an experience in Kogi, in one election, where the local government I was working from, there were serious problems. They were just shooting guns. In fact, a lot of the collation couldn't hold in a lot of the collation couldn't hold at the LGA or the ward level. It was a governorship election, so they had to move everything. Even some polling unit results, they couldn't count them because of the problems. Because of the security problems. So they moved everything to one secure location. If you see that place that day, armor tanks like everywhere, packed everywhere. But it made me feel safe, because at that point, when all those things were happening, when they're shooting guns, and I was like, I think I'll just go and stay in my hotel and just stay there until tomorrow morning. So I don't want to, be caught in the middle of some people's gunshots. But when we got to the collation of center, local government collation center, and it was so secure. We're able to stay there all night, during the collation until collation ended. So one thing is, you must ensure that all collation centers, they have to be secure. You have to have the proper people also, carrying out those processes. Very, very important. And also, chain of custody of collation materials. Yeah, one, one of the things that you shouldn't do, or you shouldn't allow to happen, is them bringing results from where you do not know, or result sheets from where you do not know, and saying, okay, these are the result sheets for you to collect. Please don't do that. There has to be a proper chain of custody of election. First of all election materials, there has to be from one level to the other. So that is why from rec hands over to the rec is resident electoral commissioners. The resident electoral commissioners, they hand over to the electoral officers of each local government. The electoral officers will now hand over to supervising presiding officer. Supervising presiding officer will end up handing over to presiding officer. That's for election materials. Now for collation, you have to hand over to the proper person. You can't say, okay, as a presiding officer, okay, me, I can't go to that ward though. Okay. This party agent, please take this my result sheet. Let me give it to the collation officer. It's not done that way. First of all, even if that party agent does not touch anything on that election result, it's already tainted, because nobody will want to believe that you know, that he didn't touch it. So there has to be a proper chain of custody of election materials at all levels, and that's including result sheets and all other materials that are used for elections. And in setting up collation centers, in setting up the process of collation, you have to ensure that you carry you place public confidence at the top, of every consideration, because that is important. That's why you cannot find collation happening outside of schools. Yeah, because if you go and hold collation in somebody's house, or um in one party secretariat, they are basically telling the public, okay, don't trust this thing that we are doing. Yeah. So you have to ensure at all times that these principles are at the back of your mind, either uh, as an observer, you're observing the process, or as an election management body staff. You have to ensure that, okay, whatever you put forth, they live up to all these principles I have outlined. Now, sorry. Now, I've been talking about collation center, collation and all that, and it may seem like, okay, every person every person in an election can just randomly enter a collation center and sit down and say, okay, I'm here to watch what people are doing. Nope, it doesn't happen that way, because imagine saying anyone can enter a collation center. Can you imagine, just for a moment, just imagine the chaos you'll be causing. Yeah. So not everybody is allowed into a collation center. But that's why candidates are advised to have agents, yeah, and that's why the media is advised to get accredited, and that's why observers are also told to get accredited, because where citizens cannot go into, these people can go into it. It is the presumption is that these people can hold election officials accountable on behalf of citizens. So, who are the people allowed into a collation center? The first on the list, of course, are INEC officials on election duty. And the reason why I stress on election duty is because not every INEC official is also allowed into a collation center. So just because you are wielding your INEC badge doesn't mean you should necessarily be allowed into a collation center. Yeah. Another category of people allowed into a collation center are security agents. Also, security agents on election duty. That is very important. Security agents on election duty. Who are the third categories of people? You also have candidates or their accredited agents. And because candidates cannot be everywhere at once, that is why every candidate needs agents, especially for collation centers. And then, like I mentioned earlier on, accredited media, you have to be accredited to enter collation center, and also accredited observers, domestic and foreign. The funny thing is that I've been on so many, on like two or three sides of this whole, who are the people allowed to enter collation center, and it's really an interesting exercise, especially when you go from, okay, being an INEC official on election duty, either as a presiding officer during my service year, or an actual INEC staff, working as a monitor or a supervisor. And then now, usually when I deploy into the field, is either as an accredited media or observer, and it's nice to see elections from another side, of the process. Very, very interesting, I must say. So, in all of this talk, yeah, We've mentioned over and over again how our collations um, collation process is manually done. Yeah. And because of that, some people will argue that that is why our collation has all this drama, you know. But me, I have my own opinion, but I won't taint yours with my own opinion. But usually, what some countries do is to deploy some safeguards, yeah, to strengthen their collation. So some of them use technology, yeah, technology where um, there's a public dashboard, you know, where real-time results is shared, like we try to do with our IREV, yeah. But what some countries actually do is from the polling unit level, they actually use that technology to, it's basically like, okay, if polling unit A has 20 votes, they just send it to that central dashboard and it shows, yeah. So anybody can actually see that total um total of all the results coming in at different times. Or you do the one that we did in 2023 by snapping and uploading the result sheets from all polling units. Yeah. So you can either do that as a method, as a way to safeguard the process, to show transparency in the process. Or, like I said earlier on, you can also have duplicate forms. Nigeria uses this a lot. When we are doing collation, there are duplicates. From the duplicate, you give the police a copy, you give political parties copies, yeah, and then observers, and then yeah, some observers may be given, or they'll just snap it so they can have, you know, a copy on there. Some collation officers will allow you snap it, you know, and all that. And then one copy also goes back to INEC apart from the original. So you have to have all these audit trails so that if anything happens to the original, you have copies every other place you can collect from. And in cases of election petitions, also, I mean, we have a state that um, some of those duplicates were what were collated, and a certain person was declared the winner of the election outside of the original person um, that was declared winner and already sworn in. So, you know, you have to have these duplicate copies outside. And then you also have to, one of the ways um, countries allow to strengthen their collation is also through observing. Yeah. So, you know, domestic, international observers are very important to the process, because I mean, you cannot come and see something and then go and say, okay, nothing happened, it was fine, you know, and all that. Or, you know, CSOs with enough integrity, they can't come and see something and say the opposite happened. That's why independent observation is very important in election, in the electoral process. And then one of the safeguard also is that there is no legal redress here. One of the most important aspects of any electoral process, any democracy, is that people who contest elections, people who vote, must have a means to seek legal redress. Any democracy, any electoral process that does not have a a dispute resolution process, either through the courts or through alternative dispute resolution, is not living up to democratic principles. So one of the safeguards is that people must be able to seek redress. And how do you do that? It's something we're going to come to when we enter the post election part of this model. Now, what are the challenges? What challenges do you face um, during election, during collation of results? You have things like malpractices. I mean, that has been the story of our elections from 1999, till date. Every time election malpractice, election malpractice. Either on the side of election officials who connive with politicians, or politicians themselves. So election malpractice is a major challenge to collation of results. Yeah, where election officials change numbers or where they disappear with collation materials. That has happened a lot. Yeah, so these are some of the challenges that people who have worked in elections will see. It happens like almost every time. It's scary. Then interference by stakeholders, either politicians, either party agents, either observers themselves also, or even the media. They could interfere with the process, and then this could also pose as a challenge. Then we have the misuse or inappropriate technology. When you ask people, um, what do you think will be the best way to improve elections or improve collation and all that? And the first thing they say is, technology, just infuse technology into the process. Let's just do electronic voting, let's just do electronic transmission. Now the problem, I'm not saying don't use technology, but the thing is, technology can be misused. Yeah. Apart from it being misused, it can cause more problems than you envisage. Yeah. And then where the technology is not the appropriate technology to be used, you will have more problems. Case in point, IRES 2023, South Africa does the whole, display of results thing and all that. But it is not the way we do it. Yes, you can actually see the vote counts increasing on their own dashboard. You know, they don't you don't snap and upload. Instead, you display the votes because they do some sort of transmission of results electronically. So it just keeps increasing. Yeah. So using inappropriate technology can even give you more problems than if you just decide, okay, let me just use my manual, just carry it from one level to the other with my hand, and let me calculate with a calculator and biro and just impute it. Sometimes it's better than to use an inappropriate technology or to misuse the technology. Yeah. And then one challenge also is that oversight functions of INEC is sometimes weak. And this is because you have you have one chairman who is depending on one chairman and 12 national commissioners who are dependent on recs, and the recs who are dependent on all of that. And the number of polling units in Nigeria, I think we have about 176,000 plus. I can't remember the exact figures. So imagine that sheer number of people. Why INEC sends monitors and supervisors into the field? Sometimes it is not enough because those monitors will probably have like, or supervisors will have like three local governments that they are supposed to supervise. One person supposed to, go to three local governments to supervise, you know. So the oversight is usually not enough. And because of that, you have presiding officers who are coppers who, well, do not really have a stake in quotes in these elections, doing as they please. You have collation officers doing as they please because, well, there's really no one at that moment to oversight them. And observers too could, I mean, to deploy officials to all collation is a lot, it's capital intensive. So most times, even big organizations like the EU, which has a very comprehensive election observation mission, may not be able to send to every nook and cranny. Yeah. So oversight is usually very, 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 very poor. So we need to find ways to probably improve the process by finding, like I said, these safeguards may be able to counter these challenges eventually. Use technology, have a public dashboard. They duplicate forms for auditing, and all that. Yeah. So that's the end of collation as I have on this model. We'll now move up to other election, post-election activities. Should I pause here and ask questions? Because the silence is killing me. The fact that I can't really, I hate online classes, but how good do? Or should I just run through and then we'll ask questions when I'm done? I think it's better to just run
Yeah.
through and then we'll ask questions. Yeah?
Yes, that works. And yes, the silence from our end is to show how keenly we are, paying attention to the
At
class.
least
So
people
let's run.
should be sending what they call those things, reactions
Emojis and
like
reactions. Yes, it is. Yes,
see
yes,
that
that's correct.
okay, people are still in this class, so
We are
because it
very
can't be
much
there, so I
with
they
you.
teach myself. Anyway,
Not at all.
post-election. Post-election. Now, post-election is there are a lot of activities in post-election, yeah. Like when I'm talking about post-election now, I'm not talking about the election, the post-election in the election cycle per se, but like, well, that also, but also some of the activities that fall mainly after you declare, yeah, a winner. So once you declare somebody, this person has scored the highest votes, okay, this person has won the election. What next? Yeah, what's next? Well, you have to issue the person certificate of return from the side of INEC because that's what the law says. The certificate of return basically is like, I mean, all of us are graduates, we've bagged certificates from our schools. So the certificate of return basically says, okay, this person having scored the highest number of votes has been declared elected, and returned as the winner of the election. And the certificate of return must be issued within 14 days of the election. So if you declare a person winner today, you count 14 days. Yeah. But usually INEC doesn't even take up to that 14 days before they issue um, a certificate of return. So that's one of the things that is done after certificate of return. And also, immediately you've declared somebody winner, something starts to happen. Something that is not seen by people starts to happen. The time for election petitions immediately starts to count. So, what are election petitions? Remember, I said something to the tune of every electoral process must provide an avenue where people who contested the election can challenge the process in court. Yeah. So that's basically what election petitions are. And in Nigeria, the only way you can challenge election results is through election petitions that are filed at an election tribunal. You can't go to federal high court and say, I want to challenge Tinubu that was just declared winner in that election. I want to challenge. No, you can't. You have to go to the election tribunals. And usually under our electoral act, you set up the electoral tribunals 30 days before the elections. So that's when all the judges they know where they are posted, and all that. And then you open their registries 7 days before the election. So once um, a, a person is declared winner, you have to file the election result, the election petition 21 days after the declaration. So once a person is declared, the next day, the date starts counting. So you can't, one of the things the worst thing that can happen to any lawyer is to miscount the days for filing of election petitions, because even if it's one day, it will be thrown out. Yeah. So you have to count properly from the day um, of declaration. And also, one thing you need to know about election petitions is that there are different tribunals here for different elections. So for presidential elections, the Court of Appeal is the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, and where when they deliver their judgment, it now goes on appeal to the Supreme Court. For governorship election, there's a governorship election tribunal set up in the states. Yeah. And then the National Assembly and State House of Assembly elections also have their own tribunals. It's joint. Those ones are called the National and State House of Assembly election tribunals, which also sit to entertain cases in coming from those elections. Like I said earlier on, you have 21 days after the date of declaration to file an election petition. And for the composition of the election tribunals, for the National State House of Assembly election tribunals, you have 4 members and a chairman. And for governorship, you have a chairman and 2 members and all that and all that. Now, tribunals don't just continue to, exist and just, keep doing their thing until they feel like delivering judgment. Nope. The law specifically says, the constitution for that matter says that tribunals must deliver judgment within 180 days. And once those tribunals deliver judgments with those 180 days, that's about, I think, 6 months. Abby, I don't know maths. So I divide 180 days. I see. I think it's about 6 months. And then appeals from those tribunals will also be heard within 60 days from the date it is filed. And then the Supreme Court is the final court for governorship and presidential election tribunals, while the Court of Appeal is the final court for appeals from the National and State House of Assembly. Now, one thing I've always argued about is that I think personally that the time for election tribunal to determine is too long. I know a lot of lawyers will not agree with me, but I think it's too long. And I think we have too many steps in determining elections. There is no reason why election petitions for presidential elections should not be heard only by the Supreme Court. And that can take a month, 2 months, so that by the time we are done with those cases, it is concluded before swearing in, and then it ends. It goes against every rule of justice, yeah, to have an incumbent going to court. The incumbent that is probably the appointing power of the judges that are sitting on those cases. It goes against every rule of justice and fairness. So for me, I feel like one of the things when we are talking about reforms, and this is also part of post-election. When you're talking about reforms, you're talking about amending the constitution and amending the electoral act, and amending all those things we want to amend. Nobody has thought of looking at, okay, can we reduce the time for election petitions? And there is no reason why anybody should go on appeal for any election petition. Let one court deal with it and let it end. Let the Supreme Court take 1 month and end uh, um, presidential election petition, or at most 2 months. Yeah, let's do this, because the more you extend the process, the Court of Appeal finishes what it's doing, and the next thing, okay, I want to appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court too will do its own thing, and then governorship too, they'll start crawling from the tribunals to Court of Appeal, from Court of Appeal to Supreme Court. Why do we need 3 levels of determining if somebody was elected? Why can't the tribunal do its job and let it end? So when we talk about reforms, I feel like we are not serious about what we want to reform. Yeah, it's just eye service. Okay, let it be said that we are doing reforms. Oh, okay, we budgeted for reforms. Let's spend some of that money that we budgeted for reforms so that it will be seen as we are doing reforms. But the real things that need to be reformed, we don't bother about them. So at this juncture, I want to bring an end to my presentation and open the door for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you so much. Well, I know you know this, but please permit me to echo the solicit passion of the fact that you are an exceptional facilitator. And we are not saying this to really pattern you, but for a fact, what we have just experienced is 3-in-1. I call it 3-in-1: orientation, a master class, and a training all together in one. I mean, from your presentation, we picked a lot of lessons and insights for us as individuals or as citizens who want to observe or who want to contribute to the electoral processes. Then perhaps we get any appointment with the INEC to work with as a PO or whatever office we are able to hold in terms of the election processes. This is also valuable for us. So that's why I said it's a 3-in-1 orientation for us as Nigerians. A particular part that stood out for me exceptionally was the aspect where there is need for us to be more intentional about contributing to the local government elections. And I believe a lot of people share the same sentiment with me. So that's why I say it's a 3-in-1. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much. So at this point, we'll take questions. We'll take questions from the participants. Some will use the mic and some will use the chat box. So if you want to ask a question using the mic, please raise your hand and we will send you a request to use the mic. And if you want to use the chat box, please do that now. This is time for question and answer. Thank you.
Okay, Adeyemi Blessing, let's start from you. I think you're the one I'm seeing first. Okay, Adeyemi Blessing. If you can you? Okay.
Adeyemi, I'll ask you to unmute. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, our facilitator. I really enjoyed the class. Hello?
You're welcome, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. My question, I have one question and an observation as a way forward, likewise. But the first question is this. With the process of the collation issue in our electoral act, the manual aspects whereby we count, and this in experience so far, we have always noticed that there is always issues, hijacking of results, and especially all these remote areas That is where most of our electoral issues have been cited and identified, where they disrupt the electoral process and the likes. And in 2023, I realized a development was implemented, which is beavers for collation. And with the current status of the country up to date, what effect so far as beavers have been able to contribute in our collating activities? And in likewise to in addendum to my question, because beavers as a development should have been the best process in
Yeah, I mean, I would appreciate if you can round off the question because we still have a number of people who want to ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In summary, can we have a way in which during the collation activities where the media can always stream live all the results, which will be going directly to the collation officer, the collation centers, to be precise. I don't know if there could be a channel or a media outlet that can actually get this done to resolve all these pending issues. Because even beavers, to be precise, even beavers that was introduced in 2023, I can still tell you that we have tech students that can still hack the sites and manipulate results. That's my question, sir. Ma.
Do you want to react to it immediately now? You want us to take?
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll take that question first, so I don't miss out anything. So your question has so many components, and let me try and answer it as much as possible. Yeah. First of all, I think introducing the beavers was probably one of the most important things that happened to our elections, in the last 5, to 6 years. Yeah. Because by the very nature, that process was supposed to work. If you understand how the beavers works, um,
Yeah.
it holds accreditation records that um, you can confirm by the number of results that you end up having on the result sheet. So, say the Beavers has 200 accreditation, and where you have on the results sheet 210, you know that there's a problem. And since the law doesn't allow for manual accreditation, you know that, okay, something has happened. Yeah. So you either manage that process or you cancel the results coming out that that space. So that is what the law says. That is what INEC process says. Over voting, you cancel, yeah, and all that. So on a normal day, we shouldn't have had problems with with the process. But like everything else, technology doesn't exist in vacuum. There are human drivers of every technology. There are humans that operate every technology. So you have to take that into consideration also when you are trying to determine why a technology that is as promising as that has failed. Yeah.
Yes, at the way forward, I
And
was
if you take the
asking
human factor, hold on, I've not finished. I'm trying to answer your
okay.
question. So when you take into consideration that that technology has failed, then what do? You look at the human that driving that technology. In an ideal situation, we probably should have held a hearing or something and ensure that that never happens again. And then those who are caught wanting should probably have been prosecuted. But we all know that did not happen. That never happened. Nothing has happened to anyone. Yeah. So to that extent, I cannot answer why we cannot use it appropriately. because it is not a question that can be answered. I can, however, say that where technology falls short, apart from auditing the technology, we also need to audit the people that handle the technology. So, in this instance, did we audit the technology and the people? I do not know. And where the people that audit that handle the technology are seen to have fallen short, they the proper thing to do in any society is one, prosecute, two, ensure that there's resignation, and all those things. But none of it happened in this instance. So to that extent, I cannot answer that question apart from the way I've answered it. Now, going to your question about media, it's
Yes.
I do not know of any media house in Nigeria that has the capability of doing that kind of deployment in a national election. One, it will cost them a lot. Money they do not have. Our media houses, for those who are in the media space, our media houses are struggling. They are struggling. They do not have the personnel. They do not have the appropriate technology, to perform maximally. So
So
it will
I
be
can
very
I,
difficult, one, to
there's
have
something I want
media.
sorry ma, there's something I want to say regarding that. I happen to be a media man. I practice media in my state here, and I was involved in the last previous elections. It is a possible thing that can happen. That it won't even cost much expenses than you thought. So, like, I believe the aspect of media in electional process, especially collation activities, are not being drastically being put in place. Taking there is something in media process. There is something that we are always used to. You can always streamline all your activities, and everything will be showing from the studio live with whatever, from different sections, from different environments, with whatever result or activity that is actually taking place. So I believe if there is a provision
Hi,
for media,
I'm sorry, I may have to cut you short because we have a number
How
of people on
many?
the line.
How many? Hold on. How many collation centers do you think exist? It's not one. Every local government has a collation center. I just taught you now that collation is at different levels. So you don't just have state collation or national collation. You have
okay, ma.
RA collation. You have local government collation. You have constituency collation. And in a presidential election, you need to deploy personnel to that. I work in a media organization, and I know the cost of even deploying for one governorship election, not to talk of a presidential and national assembly election. So, yes, it is capital intensive. You will need the resources to deploy personnel to all those levels of collation. So, it's not as easily done as you think it will be. Thank you.
Thank
Next
you so much,
person,
ma'am.
please.
Abiodun Adibeshi, I've asked you to unmute. Emmanuel, I've also asked you to unmute. So whoever gets to speak first can go ahead.
Good evening. Hello. Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Good evening.
We can hear you. Good
Yeah,
evening.
my name is Adini Adebeshi. Yeah, I have been observing elections since 1999, and I observed something that most of our observers always be in the urban area, which they left the rural area unobserved, and most of the malpractices happened in the rural area. Another thing is that we did not take our pre-election very serious. Most of the rigging start from the pre-election. because they have planned it from the pre. Because I have observed, I'm part of the local observer, and I observe disability specific situation in the INEC, the way they do their election, and I know what I'm saying. And again, most of the observers will not go to party primaries. They will not observe the way the parties do their things. They just leave them like that. And also, we don't take care of the post-election period. And I know this post-election period is also important. But my question is the use of the transfer of the electoral materials from one collating center to another. And I want to know how is can be corrected that there will be no manipulation from it, because during the election you'll be seeing those people having call, and you will see people putting money inside bread for the people to do the way when the INEC is trying to modify the election, and the politicians too are also improving in the way they will be rigging. They will just stay in one place, and many things they will be doing parties there. And if you have voted, and we go to the party and tell them I voted for this thing. We observe so many things like that. I just want you to tell
So
us
what
that
is your
the way we
question?
can also improve. My question is, how can we improve our polls and post-election and pre-election mechanism?
Which of the post and pre-election mechanism? Is it the election petition
In the
period, or
what I noticed,
reforms period, or review
even in
period?
the reform, what I noticed from my observing election is that most of the rigging start from the pre,
Is it me
not
that
even
cannot
during
hear
the
him
election.
anymore?
Hello?
We lost you for a bit there.
Okay, so he was trying to say that
If you
from
can
the
hear me.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Oh, I guess it's your network. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. So what he was trying to say, he
Okay,
said
go
from his
on.
experience, he observed over the period that the election malpractice has always been, it starts rather from the pre-election. So he cited the case of primaries. He said INEC is not, overseen and stuff like that. So maybe you want to take it from there so that the misconception there can
Okay.
be corrected.
Okay. INEC is the body charged with monitoring political parties, and in fact, where INEC is not there to oversee your party primaries, it's it's liable to be declared invalid. So I don't know where you I don't know the party primaries you've attended, but almost, in fact, there's a special deployment during political primaries of INEC staff to monitor from the bottom up. It's a requirement under the law, and INEC does it. I think I also got you saying something about observers not monitoring those processes. You know, yeah, I could agree with you that there are, like civil society, a lot of civil society organizations just concentrate on observing elections and not observing the processes that leads to that election. That is true. Yeah. But I think also, we also forget that, elections are very expensive for all the stakeholders involved. For INEC, for INEC, for civil society, for the politicians themselves. It's a very capital intensive um, um, process. But I know that increasingly there are civil society organizations that are starting to follow the process from the beginning to the end. And maybe in 2027, with the activities starting from next year, we're going to see a lot of these civil societies actually um, uh, participating more in the nomination processes. Yeah, but it's a good thing to want to, for those of you that volunteer for different civil societies, maybe you should recommend that they actually follow the process holistically and not just for election day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Emmanuel, you have the mic
Next
muted, right?
person, please.
Well, okay. Good evening, Ma. Thank you for that wonderful and powerful presentation. You made mention of the different courts or the different panels or tribunal that handle cases of election, and I understood clearly their differences. My question here, Ma, something happened in my state where the election tribunal went up to the Supreme Court, and the case of the governor, he actually lost at the appeal court, and then he won at the Supreme Court. And unfortunately for House of Assembly members and federal lawmakers, they also lost at the appeal court. And the Supreme Court made it very clear that it was a very wrong judgment
Is it
at the
me
appeal
or
court.
is it breaking?
I guess it's from
Hello?
your end. We can hear you clearly. Perhaps you can just try to see anything
Okay.
to do, maybe try again, something.
Okay, I
Hello,
think
can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you now.
Yeah, Emmanuel,
Please, can you,
probably
yes,
go
please,
over.
can you quickly go through?
All right,
Quickly.
ma. I
But please
said you
rush
okay.
it, Emmanuel. Fast track the
Okay. I'm talking about the difference between the Supreme Court, the appeal court, and I said our governor actually won his case, though he lost at the appeal court and then he won at the Supreme Court. And unfortunately for the federal lawmakers and state house of assembly, they also lost at the appeal court. And the Supreme Court made it very clear that that judgment was a very wrong judgment from the appeal court. But unfortunately, I don't know what
Okay.
happened. I was even thinking something would be done
I
about
get,
that.
because
But
it's also my state. It's also my state. So let me go over
okay,
it.
Plateau State. Okay,
First
all right.
of all,
Thank you.
if only the tribunal had given that judgment and it had ended there without all the appeal processes, it would have ended there. But because we have too many appeal processes, you go from one place to the other, you be going all over the place to appeal. That's why some of this confusion comes in. Yeah. Yes, the tribunal gave its judgment. The appeal court set it aside based on a technicality. Yeah, but also remember that the Supreme Court is the highest court of the land, and it is what it says is the law. That it's the law, and the Supreme Court has said that political parties um, should be the only ones that can present a candidate and without interference from, meddlesome interlopers, basically setting aside whatever the Court of Appeal says. But now you must understand that the law says that for houses of assembly, for National Assembly election petitions, it ends at the Court of Appeal. And if you are not a party to a case, you cannot reap from the benefits of the case. Do you understand? So the case that went before the Supreme Court was the governorship election case, not the National Assembly and State House of Assembly case. So whatever the Supreme Court said, while it is now binding on all other courts, yeah, the damage has already been done in respect of those legislators. Sadly, that is the law. So if, for example, they had power, they had a right to appeal to the Supreme Court, then the Supreme Court will have probably set aside that judgment of the Court of Appeal. But they don't have that right of appeal. So whatever the Court of Appeal has said in their case will follow them until whenever. So that's about it. Now, going forward, the Supreme Court has already laid down what the law is. So the Court of Appeal cannot, in future judgments, now say, okay, we did not know, and then they will give a different interpretation to that law. That will be termed judicial rascality. They will not even try it again. But sadly, the harm has already been done with those legislators from Plateau State. The only option for them is to go and contest again when the time reaches. Nothing can be done. The Supreme Court judgment cannot automatically follow them. They cannot enjoy the fruit of a judgment that they were not parties before it. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. So someone is asking questions in call messages. The conversation is the question is essentially about how do we reduce voter apathy and also sort of curtail some of these electoral malpractices and whatnot that surround the electoral process that we are not comfortable with.
Okay, who is asking questions next?
Yeah, that is from Paul. I think he raised his hand, but he already dropped it in the link call
Okay.
message, so I read it.
Okay, I think I can see the message. Paul, these are questions. Honestly, I think the only thing that can cure voter apathy is if and when citizens see that the electoral process has improved. That's just it. Because from now to tomorrow, yeah, you can preach, you can tell people that, elections will be determined by them. Our leaders, they shouldn't give up on coming out to vote. They should ensure they come out to vote because, blah, blah, blah. Tell them what their rights and duties as citizens are. Sadly, I don't know if it will work. Yeah, because the more I scream, okay, you people need to vote in 2027, the more I meet people that say, oh, okay, we are not interested. Yeah. And that's because, people must see that the process works. The process must be clear enough. The process must be credible enough. So that is why, uh, first thing first, we must hold INEC or all our other election management bodies to account, yeah, and all. But then also we also always forget one thing, that if we don't participate, it makes it easier for the process to be undermined. It's also that simple, yeah. So we need to. I don't know how we're going to do it, honestly, because it's something that keeps me up at night. I want 2027, and I want to see, at least 70%. In fact, just give me 50% turnout rate of voters, and I'll be fine for that election. But I don't have the answers. Yeah, I don't have the answers. I just wish that. Um, but I also know that it's a collective effort. No one organization can do it. Not INEC, not political parties, not CJID, not IAGA, not the Electoral College, of not any one of them. But it's a collective thing. All of us must, INEC, political parties, everybody must get in and get the job done. So that is why you're in this class, to learn the rudimentaries and, and participate the way it should be. Participate. I always say that when you stand on the side of the process, on the side of the law, yeah, you never go wrong because those are objective standards. The law sets a standard. Yeah. So where any candidate or any political party falls short of that standard, you should hold them to account. It shouldn't be that, okay, because I'm a member of APC. I think one thing I hate with all my heart is when I hear party is supreme. I think it's the most stupid, pardon me, the most stupid expression that some idiot coined to avoid responsibility as a citizen. A party cannot be more supreme than your constitution, than the laws of your land, than your country. So we should be able to hold everyone account, irrespective of political parties, or irrespective of that. That's your job as a citizen. Yeah. After elections, you should go back to being a citizen. That's your job. So when Tinubu does something that is obviously against the law, whether Fubara is stupid or not, doesn't matter. The fact is that you cannot, as a president, suspend a governor. We should all say it. That is what the law says. Even if the attorney general says other, the attorney general is the minister of justice. You don't expect him to say anything other than what he's supposed to be the one finding lacunas for the president, to break the law. So why are you expecting anything from him? So irrespective of where you are from, where the laws are, the law is the objective standard. Don't forget it. So participation, what does the law say? Yeah. In every aspect of governance, in every aspect of politics, the law is the objective standard, not what your political party says, not what your candidate says, definitely not what your ethnic group says or your pastor says. Yeah. So I'm just ranting generally. I don't know what we can do to improve the numbers, but I know that it's a collective job for all of us. And I hope that going forward, what I do during elections is, I'm probably going to start from January next year, is to get as many people to register. Those who have not registered, I'll make sure I speak to one person, at least one person a day, on on why they should register and why they should vote. Yeah, and get them to promise me that they are going to do that. So maybe if we all try to do that, who knows? Maybe we'll have more people. And then the next question in the that I'm seeing is, in some gubernatorial and local elections, INEC has been accused of selective disqualification or recognition of factions within parties. Example is the Zamfara, also in Rivers State. Because is there any? Okay. INEC, you know how I said that the law is the objective standard, yeah? I think that's what applies in this situation. INEC cannot recognize a faction because the faction says they should be recognized. Yeah. Two things happen. If, for example, I am chairperson of party DPP, and then my name is with INEC as chairperson of party DPP, and then a faction sends a letter to INEC and says, oh, okay, Amina is no longer chairperson of party DPP, but one Husseina is chairperson of party DPP. You did not call INEC to monitor any primaries where you elected a new political party leadership. You did none of that, but you expect INEC to recognize a person they do not know without a court order. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. INEC cannot recognize people because the people said they should be recognized. They have to, one, have monitored a process that they recognize as legal, where the person was elected as a leader of the party, or two, they have a valid court order which says recognize this person. And that is how INEC recognizes. And mind you, if they have a court order that says recognizes this person, and then the next day they have another court order that says do not recognize, they will go back. Because that is how the law works. So it's that simple, really. But from outside, maybe INEC needs to communicate more about those processes. But it's simple as that. Yeah. It's really that simple. Okay, somebody said election tribunals is a harvest time for lawyers. Why are cases won at different law courts when most cases are determined by technicalities? Why are cases won at different law courts when cases are... I don't know if I understand this question. You know,
so I think we'll take this as the last question. So what the question was
okay.
Is very reference to the situation that you mentioned earlier in Plateau State, where the one the tribunal, the laws at the Court of Appeal. So the person asking, since law is about technicalities and lawyers know this thing, so why is it that they win at tribunal, then they now get they lose at the Court of Appeal? That's what the person is trying to find out.
Okay, you know, even as a lawyer, this question is usually, you know, I usually ask myself why courts keep determining cases based on technicalities and not looking at the substantive matter. And a lot of lawyers will tell you it's because judges don't want to touch certain cases. Yeah. Or they just want to they don't want to touch certain cases. And election petitions are the easiest cases for judges not to want to touch. Yeah. And also, you also have to factor in the fact that there is corruption in the judiciary. It's also a very serious problem. So for people who have followed election petitions and some strange judgments that come out of those spaces, you know, these questions become more prevalent. But the thing is, I think there was a survey recently which said something about the judiciary being the most corrupt or something institution, you know, in terms of monetary corruption. And it was as a result of the 2023 general elections and the whole tribunal period that that study was done. Yeah, so we can't rule out corruption. We also can't rule out the fact that, like I said earlier on, the people who appoint these judges are the people you are asking these judges to give judgment against. How do we expect it to work? No, I need us to like, how do we expect these things to work when we make these laws, when we set these standards, you know, and all that? How do we expect them to work? Especially when you are not using anything to safeguard it. You are not saying, okay, judges cannot be removed ever, no matter what. Yeah. You are not saying judges have immunity. Yeah. All you are saying is, okay, they can be removed by the president with this thing from the National Assembly, you know. So it means they can be removed. With all of this, you expect a judge to give judgment, a sound judgment against somebody that is the appointing power or the confirming power. I think we like to look at, I think Nigerians are probably one of the few people on earth that create laws but do not give safeguards against laws. Okay, we expect judges to be saints that will just not have they need to preserve themselves. Yeah, you know, you just expect what do you call it? You just expect everyone to be patriotic, everyone to want to lay down their lives for Nigeria. without, you know, without safeguard. Yeah. So it still goes back to, first, we must amend our laws to ensure that election petitions are done way before anybody is sworn in as anything. That's one. Two, let's explore granting judges immunity too. Maybe it will make the judiciary more effective. Maybe they will stop being afraid. Maybe they'll become bold and start canceling elections and asking for new elections to be done. You know, like we've seen in Kenya, we've seen in other countries. Yeah, maybe if we are able to do this, maybe we'll have better judges. And of course, those who are caught wanting should be prosecuted. It's that simple. So that question, a lot of things can be done, and honestly, I don't know if we are willing to make those sacrifices to make this country better. Thank you. Is it
Thank you
feasible
so
for
very much.
citizens to
So the
vote
last few
electronically
statements.
from home or
Can you hear
designated
me?
government approved centers using only their voter? No, there is.
Hello, can
Yeah,
you hear
I
me?
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Sadly,
I
we
can
have
hear
to
you.
bring the class to an end. Yes, sadly, we have to bring the class to an end because it's past 7. Honestly, this is one of the few classes that shot beyond our time. We are supposed to round off some minutes to 7. But because, of course, it's quite an interesting session and people have a lot of questions they have answers to. So what we do is perhaps this question can be collated and perhaps get across to you some other time and you can send back answers to them via any means possible. So, but we have to end the class now, sadly. Thank you so much for an exclusive and extensive masterclass that you have given us today. To be honest, like I said, it's a 3-in-1 orientation, masterclass, and so a lot of call to action. So at this point, I would just say I want to sincerely thank you for your time once again, for the knowledge share, for the experience share, and for the way you answered the question. So I would hand over to Madam Lisa for any announcement so that we can officially bring the class to an end. Thank you. Hello, Madam Lisa, can you hear me? Okay, so I will round up the class. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would unmute all of us so that we can all unmute and say we want and say our appreciation to our facilitator for today. Please, I've asked us to unmute,
Thank
so
you.
let's unmute and say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
madam.
Thank you.
Madam,
Great
thank you for
job.
being so.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Thank you.
God.
We appreciate
Thank you. This
guys
section
more.
is one of the best sessions we have
Thank
attended this
you.
section. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
man.
man.
God bless you.
Yeah, amen. I used to. So the entire participants are saying thank you. We are joining. All of us from the Electoral College are also saying thank you. And we hope that we have more of this of you in the friendly as well.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so much.
thank you, thank
Ẹ
you.
ṣé gan ni o ní Yorùbá. Ẹ ṣé gan ni o lédè
So
Yorùbá.
Thank you. Thank you. Really
Thank you
appreciate
Oh
so
yeah,
much,
who will say
everyone.
international
Thank you. Enjoy,
it. It has been a
enjoy the
wonderful
rest of
one.
your
Thank you.
weekend.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.